Hello everyone, today we're going to do a quick video on digital PR. Although Balance is a financial services agency, the things that we're going to talk about today are kind of broadly applicable across all sectors. So a quick word on who Balance are. We're a financial services specialist digital marketing agency covering a range of services from SEO to PPC to paid social and of course digital PR and content. So I'm Alex Murphy. I'm the co-founder of Balance, and I've worked within financial services for about 20 years. And actually, the reason I'm talking today instead of one of our PR specialists is because I think it's quite common these days that digital PR is talked about a lot, right? And people call it digital PR, digital PR. And one of the main reasons for that, and I promise I'm not going to talk about a lot today, is AI. Right? So when we talk about the features that are going to be very important, the skills that we need to have to make sure that we're getting recommendations in LLMs, whatever you want to call them, digital PR comes up right towards the top of the list of important skill sets. But I'm one of those people that was maybe a bit cynical of it in the past. You know, is it digital PR? Is it outreach? Is it link building? Is it all of those? How does it differ from digital PR, from traditional PR? All those two questions are in my mind as a bit of a layman with digital PR. So what I thought I'd do today is talk through the questions I often had. I know a lot of our clients, the people that we speak to, have when we first start working with them, and to address some of those questions and common questions in the market. Okay, so when we talk about SEO as a whole, we tend to commonly use the sort of the Venn of the three areas of SEO, and they've been the three core areas of SEO over the last 20 years, all right, which is on-site, off-site, and then the sort of technical SEO aspects. Now, this is just as present and just as important today for AI and other areas. But what's happened a lot in financial services over the last few years is a big focus on EAT. So EAT, if you're not familiar with it, is experience, expertise, authority, and trust. Now, digital PR plays a lot into that. Obviously, through digital PR, we demonstrate our expertise in the topic. The experience is lived by the people that are talking about these topics, or the people we interview, or the information that we share. Now, obviously, they've got an authority, just both in the SEO sense, but in the truest sense of the word, authority, of knowing about this topic and having a lot of concentrated information on this topic. And then finally, trust. You know, why are we the people who should be speaking about this? Now, whilst it's very important in content for Google rankings and all of those things, it's becoming very obvious that those skills are important to AIs. That's what an AI looks at when it's wondering who to cite, who to recommend. And that's why digital PR has become so at the forefront of the skill sets going into 2026. So I said at the beginning, what struck me with digital PR is that it's called a lot of different things, outreach, link building, and so on. And so I think it was quite useful to have a bit of another Venn, we're a bit obsessed with Venn here today, to talk about where do they overlap with what might be called traditional PR. And actually there's a huge overlap, and there's a lot of traditional PR agencies that do aspects of digital PR, and there's a lot of traditional PR aspects that a digital PR agency will do. But there are some subtle differences. So digital PR as an agency, when we do that sort of thing, it's a lot more real time. It's very data centric. It tends to look a lot at the link, intersect, and other aspects of competitors to see where the gaps might be. And obviously it overlays that alongside a lot of SEO metrics and website and digital metrics. Whereas then, of course, you've got all the middle bit, right? Where you've got a lot of the same things that happen. You've got press releases, you've got campaigns, you've got relationship building, target publications, all of those rich important areas that are key to building up a profile, both as a brand, but online. Where we tend not to play are things like crisis management, maybe TV events, getting you on GMTV, things like that. Although, again, we have done that. It's not really what we do at a core. We're very much about your digital presence and your brand mentions across the web. So backlinks. Now, a lot of you are like, I know what a backlink is. But for those of you who are less familiar, but maybe some of you might need a refresher, what is a backlink? Now, simply put, it is a link back to the website, right? And I know basics, okay? But Despite this being the case for a very, very long time, a lot of brands get this wrong. Okay, one of the key things that is important is the whole quantity versus quality argument. Now, you might say, we'll get you this many backlinks. As a metric, it's quite unhealthy to pursue because it's easy to get lots of backlinks. You can buy them, you can pick them up from junk websites, you can pick them up with sites with no authority. It's very easy to get large numbers of links. And yes, sometimes when you have a successful campaign, you will pick up a lot of links that don't really have a lot of value, but they are a byproduct, they're not the goal. And so quantity versus quality is a really important argument. And that's why campaigns that target pure volume are never the way to go. Now, when we say quality, what does that mean? Well, a quality link is just like anything. The quality opinion is that of a brand of another brand who has authority in your space, or a brand that has general authority within the public. So take Balance, for example. Okay, a link from the Financial Times is very, very valuable. It has a lot of equity, as you might call it, but also just by the fact if someone sees our brand mentioned in the Financial Times, that gives the brand some credibility, some lended credibility. Even if you take SEO and everything else out of it, by virtue of being there and being talked about, they have credibility. But equally, if you're mentioned on something like The Sun, all right, now you're like, oh, The Sun or the tabloids, yes, they lack a certain level of trust, they have a certain level of authority, but undeniably, they have vast millions of visitors every day. They have an authority within society. And so they are a very important and valuable link. And they're a big signal. The brand being mentioned is one of some notoriety. And that's why it's about a quality thing, but also, yes, specifically quality within your sphere, but also within society as a whole. So we've done the relevancy versus scale things, and both are important. But what about B2B and B2C? Surely you could think, well, as a B2B brand, I only deal with, maybe I'm a fintech that only deals with banks, or I'm a commercial insurer that only deals with businesses. Do I really need this kind of scale of a broad public domain kind of paper? Well, actually, yes, because you're still getting authority, you're still getting brand mentions out there. We talk about AI again, very briefly. AI, as I think Rand Fishkin called it, is spicy autocorrect. It's looking at probabilistically what is the most commonly used thing alongside another word, right? So if you want to be associated with a type of product, then your brand being alongside it in vast publications like that can only help, especially when we get into Google AI overviews. It's just trying to work out statistically what is the most likely next word. And often that will be your brand if you're mentioned in these big publications. So we've got relevancy. Yes, you want to be mentioned in the right places. You want to be mentioned where your specific audience is. But of course, you want to be mentioned at scale as well, if you can afford to. So we've talked about why digital PR is important, how it plays into Google and types of content and EAT and all those. Now let's get down to some nitty gritty about how we get links and how we get brand mentions. The easiest way to do that is kind of split into three kind of key areas, which is reactive, proactive, and campaigns. That's how we tend to talk about it. Now, reactive is the sort of thing like getting expert comments. Okay, so you have a comment ready. So the budget is coming. Okay, so when the budget is coming, we tend to speak to our clients and we go, okay, what's your stance on this? What's your stance on that? Have a comment ready for whatever the budget might do. But equally, a new event happens and we'll use the tools that we have available to us to go ask for comments, and we'll speak to our clients or ourselves. Sometimes we've got opinions for what it's worth, and we'll go, well, this is our opinion, blah, 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 brand mention alongside a quote. The press need this fuel for them. Also, it's very good for us. Now, that's reactive. What about proactive? Well, that's generally your more traditional kind of press releases. So press releases can be about anything. Often when they're a bit more B2B, it might be about product releases, it might be partnerships, it might be big organizational changes, and they are a bit more dry, but they still get the name mentioned, and to your audience, they're still quite relevant. So that's quite a big one, is proactive kind of press releases, but they tend to be more that kind of mid-level scale, depending on what you're talking about. depending on the company you are as well. Massive companies making massive product changes is obviously bigger news. But then finally there's campaigns, and campaigns are the real juice. They're the ones you can't do them all the time. They're a lot of work. They tend to involve a lot of first-party data or other data sources that haven't been necessarily put together in that way before to tell a new compelling story. And that's the stuff that really gets the papers interested, gets the publications interested, because it's new news. Even if maybe it's data that's existed, combining it in a way that provides information to help people make their daily decisions about their businesses they're going to partner with, about what products they're going to buy, what brands they trust. That's the stuff that really works. And what we'll tend to do there is maybe come up with a hypothesis about, well, I wonder what the most common type of loan is at the moment, or whatever it might be, right? What are people doing with their pensions these days? Anything like that, and pulling this data together. Normally financial services have quite rich data, for example, and turning it into something that's new. Data sources are obviously a rich source of information there. Now, first-party data is the best, in my opinion, as long as you can use it sensibly and confidentially, and it's not giving anything personal away. First-party data is, by virtue of it, no one else has got that, right? So you automatically have a competitive advantage. But it's not always possible to do that, or maybe you don't think it's got enough public interest or general interest in it, in which case you can use other sources that aren't your own, but are free to access maybe. So the land registry data or freedom of information requests can give you a lot of really good information, and they're generally free to acquire. Alternatively, you could run surveys, large, hopefully unbiased surveys, to give you fresh information. So the point is this data is available, a lot of it, internally or externally. So it's about using this common data, but in an uncommon way. So an example of a campaign is a bit of a funny one because it's our own. So Balance is a few years old now, but when we launched, we knew we had to launch big. There's a million agencies out there. We're very aware of that. And whilst none are really specialists in the same way that we are, we knew that we still had to have something to break through. So what we noticed was that obviously Consumer Duty was coming in at the time, and also the EAT had become very prevalent within Google. So we thought, well, what's the intersect between those two worlds? And what we did was created a lot of first-party data. We looked at 50 of the top financial services brands, and we looked at how they performed on each of the EAT criteria. Created a massive spreadsheet, which took me days and days of work to do. And then we turned those into charts, hooks. We found that actually a lot of the big the big financial services institutions were failing in a lot of criteria. We also put accessibility in there and tracked that to see how that was doing, because obviously it's very important that we're inclusive. So we went through all of that, we created a bunch of stories, and then we sold it in. And indeed, straight away, we got tons of coverage. We were in FT about it. And when does the FT ever cover an agency launch? So it just shows the power of catering exactly the right stories for your target audience, which for us was financial services marketers. We talked about the 3 different types of campaign that we can do: the reactive, the proactive, and then the campaign. So as it happens with one of our clients, we were waiting actually for the freedom of information request to come through. So we thought, well, what great content could we use to really sell the story? And our client, an accountancy firm, actually had quite a lot of information about people who needed to know whether they were going to get taxed when they sell through Vinted. Now that was actually, we found a story that a lot of people cared about, a lot of people are interested in, with the swell of private selling. And so we looked into that and created content around that and sold that in. Now, to date, I think we're on about 450 pieces of coverage just on that one topic, because the way we packaged it, how it was sold in, how it was cut for different audiences. And that actually wasn't a very expensive campaign. That was a campaign that used known information and just packaged it in a way that was highly relevant. Now, one of the best sources of information are going to be your own internal team, your internal experts. The amount of times I see content about a specialist nature being written by the marketing manager and authored by the marketing manager, and no offense to my colleagues here, but we're not specialists necessarily in investment banking or insurance loss ratios or whatever it might be. Okay, this information should come from people who know this stuff. And not only does Google recognize the authorship, but so will an AI, and so does the common reader. They want to know the person giving their opinion is someone who's been around the block and know what they're talking about. So internal experts are a beautiful source of information there. But it can't always be your founder. It can't always be your CEO. Speak to the sales team, speak to the head of finance, speak to whoever it might be that has a relevant opinion about this topic that you're covering. Sometimes that's quite a hard thing to do. And you can work with an agency to because a lot of content writers or PR people will be really good at interviewing to get just the right amount of information out to make it a good story. So despite having the best story in the world, the most compelling information, what you need to remember is that journalists are busy people, and we could talk more about that. But one of the ways you're going to get in front of them and maybe identify those, once you've identified those publications that you really want to be in. So we do something called, I mentioned it earlier, a link intersect, which might be your competitors appearing in these 8 publications that are very relevant or have great scale, but you aren't. So they become target publication because you're trying to close that gap. One thing you could do, if they are an important enough one, is to offer an exclusive. When you offer exclusives, it just gives them that little bit of extra juice. I mean, the news is about exclusivity, about being first to market with an interesting story. If your story is compelling enough, sometimes you can jump to the top of the queue with that. So one of the main reasons that people use digital PR specialists is because of their black book, this imaginative black book of contacts. Now, building a media contact list is hard and does take time. And it's undeniable that if our head of PR reaches out to someone in the FT or one of the other big financial services publications, that they're going to know them. They're going to know the email. They're going to go, I sent you this article from this client or that client before you published it. And they understand not only what they will be interested in and what but also how to cater that to their audience. So it is useful. But there are tools out there that will show you who the journalists are, at least to cover it in these publications. Good old X normally has them on there, tools like Hunter. But there are ways of finding these people. Absolutely, it's easier using an agency, but if that isn't a possibility for you, don't think that you have to be completely in the dark. You might find it more of an uphill struggle to actually break into that person's inbox. So why is that? Why do we have to work so hard just to get our press releases seen by journalists? Surely write a nice press release, whack it out, it's going to get read and covered, right? But of course, no. And journalism's changed a lot over the last 5, 10, 20 years, and it's probably going to change at an accelerated rate even now. And one of the reasons for that is that with the move to online, with the move of different ways of consuming media, newspapers have had less and less and less money, which means that they have less and less staff, which means every journalist, when they used to have a specialist in one topic or a specialist in another, they're wearing 20 different hats, which means they're getting up to 800 or more press releases thrown at them a day. So you can't afford to just chuck one in anymore. It's got to be hyper relevant. It's got to be targeted. Ideally, it's from someone they know, but if not, it has to be really eye-catching, just like a sales email would be. So you've got to provide that extra value, maybe even format it in a way that makes their job as absolutely easy as possible. Don't make them think. A few more tips with best practices here. A/B test. Maybe you send a press release out and just no one picks it up. Okay, it's really hard to recognize your own stuff. And even when you've got a highly cynical PR person telling you that's not a story or that is a story, even when you get past them, sometimes for some reason the press just don't pick it up. So A/B test those subject lines, just like in email marketing. Follow up. Just because they didn't respond the first time doesn't mean that they saw it, didn't like it. It's worth doing a follow up. Yes, you might get ignored. Yes, you might annoy them. But I think these people are already pretty used to being annoyed. So try and get in front of those people. Finally, customize your press releases. A hack that I'm not even sure I'm supposed to share with our head of PR is that she imagines what the subject line what the headline might look like in the newspaper. So take The Sun, for example. They like to capitalize certain words. So she might even write it in a way just like that with the keyword capitalized. So yeah, it's important that you're thinking all the time on how can I customize this. Now, another way of doing that obviously is customize it by region. So say we did a big story on mortgages across the country. You might do Glasgow has this many mortgages, Cardiff has this many mortgages. You change the story to a specific thing relevant to that particular newspaper if you can. So digital PR in a nutshell. It's useful to think of it as the 3 C's. It's critical. Now, we might have said this a few years ago, but actually now it really is critical. You know, digital PR isn't one of those things that's nice to have, a cool luxury, maybe a little bit of branding sugar on top of your performance marketing. It is very critical now. As you've seen, it's a big signal for AI overviews, but also your ChatGPTs, your Perplexities, and so on. It's critical for giving you that brand awareness that might be out of reach for a lot of brands, or certainly not without a lot of extra money. Now, it's also collaborative. You're going to have to work with the teams internally, maybe between a traditional PR team and your digital PR team, maybe between the internal PR team and your agency, but also across the business. You're going to have to understand, what are the real nitty-gritty elements of your business that are going to capture the attention of your customers. Normally sales, etc., know your customers better than you do. And so it's worth working out what is actually of interest. What are the problems that they're dealing with? What stuff can we write about and create actual stories about? And it's about collaborating with journalists. They're under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of stress. You're competing with a lot of other businesses to get their attention. So work with them. Give them the stuff that makes their job easier. And then finally, it's creative. Okay, it takes really good digital PR, takes hard data-driven insights and turns it into angles and hooks that you never would have thought of. It can shape common information and make it into uncommon angles that are really going to capture people's attention. And then finally, and very importantly, digital PR can take budgets of a few thousand and turn them into the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of paid media coverage. And that itself shows why it's worth exploring. Okay, thank you everyone for our quick roundup of digital PR. So hopefully when everyone's saying, it's the most important thing in the world, now we've got AI, now you have a little bit more knowledge about what digital PR, what it isn't, what it can be. Thank you, and I hope you find this useful.